Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final Iron Flame podcast. Final, as in one of two. We're not done with the series, I guess.
I mean,
It's
we're
just,
done with what's out of the series as of this minute, but even when we release this, Onyx Storm will be out. So
yeah, true, true.
I think
Yeah,
it comes out on release day. So
I
happy
know.
Onyx Storm release day, everybody.
Yeah, you're probably none of you are listening to this podcast because you're reading
Yeah.
Onyx Storm, which fair. Me too. Okay, today we're going to run the podcast slightly differently because, as you've noticed, our last two podcasts have been like 3 hours. Um, Today we have even more like things, as in like plot points and events that happen in the second half, if we can even believe it. So I think we have been like summarizing and doing our thoughts and doing fan theories along the way, plus Amy's personal theories. Um, we're not gonna summarize everything, just so you know. We're gonna assume you read it, and this is gonna be more supplemental this episode to hopefully not be longer than an entire musical. Um to just talk about half this book. Okay, we'll see how well we actually do, not summarizing every single thing, because there's so much to talk about. We might still end up doing that. But let's start off with our ratings of final stars for Iron Flame.
I didn't actually go in and give it a rating yet, but I was thinking about it, and I feel like 4.5 stars. I think I like the first book more, or maybe it was just because it was brand new to me, but I still really like this book. But
Yeah,
yeah.
4.5 is what I originally gave it. Um, and I feel like that's pretty fair on the second read through. I will say classic, a lot of fantasy authors, but the last, 100 pages slash last like three chapters really like turns it around. There is, I feel like, a little less pacing in the book just because we have like a lot of miscommunication and third wheel stuff that I get is like good flavor, but to me slows down when you have a book that's so full of like intense plot already. To add that, I don't know. It wasn't for me. Anyways, but I like Fourth Wing more than Iron Flame, and I'm very excited. Onyx Storm supposedly is Rebecca Yarros' favorite of the series so far. It's the one that she feels is her best writing.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm excited. It should be good. I'm also excited that we can talk about everything now because Amy knows everything I actually know.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything I say is stuff from the internet.
I think this is the first time ever on the podcast we can do that because I remembered more about Twilight than you.
Yeah,
Now. Oh, that's funny.
yeah. Uh-huh. It's the first time we're able to both share all our thoughts. What a time.
Hmm.
In addition to talking about Iron Flame and all the fan theories for what Onyx Storm is going to be out, I also today want to talk about the interview that was just came out about Rebecca Yarros from Elle magazine. Did you see or read it, Amy?
No, because I have not really consumed any media because I didn't want spoilers. I just spent like 10 minutes looking at some TikTok videos, but I did not see that. So,
Yeah, yeah. The interview was super good, I thought. Um, yeah, so we'll talk about that more also. But yeah, wow, wow, wow. So much to cover. So much to cover. I can't decide if we should just jump in or if I just want to hear what your fan theory or what your theories were and what spoilers you saw online and if they actually spoiled anything.
I can talk about the spoilers.
Okay.
One of them was accurate, but it is not how I thought it was gonna come about. And
Okay.
the other one is completely not accurate. The completely not accurate one is actually kind of funny. It was a death. It was a TikTok that I saw, and what I thought I saw was it was like three photos, and the first photo was the height difference between Xaden and Violet, and then the next one showed that Violet was 5'2", and then the next one was Xaden is 6 feet under. So I thought he died, and I looked back up. I looked that meme back up, and I was like, "Oh, it said Liam. It did not say Xaden." So I was so convinced Xaden was going to die this whole time. And it's like, oh no, just kidding. They're talking about Liam. That happened in the first book. So
Yeah,
that kind of funny, but I'm still convinced Zayden's gonna die. So, you know.
proud.
But then the other one, which is a big spoiler, but also not what I thought, was
Uh,
I was looking up Lilith Sorrentale to make sure I had spelled it correctly. I didn't even hit enter on Google, but the second suggested search was Lilith Sorrentale Venom. So I thought she was like secretly Venom this whole time, was more what I was thinking along the lines of, rather than her becoming Venom and sacrificing her life kind of thing. So
hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's talk about that because so do you is that your interpretation of that section that you feel like she like became Venom to like sacrifice like her power to fix the ward stones? We're going all the way to like the end of the book.
Yeah, we are. I mean, that's what I interpreted, I think, because I was waiting so long for her to like be Venom, but I guess I didn't really like think too critically about. We don't know for sure exactly what happened, I guess, but I just
Yeah.
jumped to assuming that.
Yeah. Okay. So, because I think, we know that Sloane is there to like funnel her power in, and that her mom sacrifices her life to use her final magic, or more like her dragon's final magic, though her dragon lives for all we know. We have no reason to believe she wouldn't. Into the ward stone to make the ward work. We know she dies. Okay. This brings me to one of the most interesting fan theories that I was going to talk about at the end of book one. And this is the one I decided to wait, which is the fan theory that is out there is that Violet's mom is either part Venom, has been the whole time, or was attacked by a Venom when she was pregnant with Violet, and that's why the end of Violet's hair is silver or gray, no matter what length it is. And the idea that like she was somehow like attacked by a Venom in combat when she was pregnant with Violet, and the effects of that like have permanently affected Violet so that her hair always is like leaking the color. And that's why in the episode at the end of Fourth Wing, when I was talking about how like the Venom, as they were pulling power from the earth, it was leaching color, and you were like, oh, I don't remember that. And then I was like, oh, we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like one of the biggest fan theories out there. Um, so I think that's probably what the Google search was about. That's my guess.
Yeah, I was just looking now. I'm like, oh, I guess I could like search that on Google and look, and it is a Reddit page talking about like, I don't know, I'm vaguely skimmed it, but about like theories with that. And I I think that theory does make sense because I had this bias. Literally, this happened after our first episode of Fourth Wing was when I searched it. So like I had that thought this whole time. And so I just like had that context in my mind and read into it whenever there was anything said. And like one of the things that stuck with me was Violet's dad talking about how there was potentially he said something about like there being venom like in the leadership at I don't know, Basgiath or in Navarre. So yeah, I feel like that's a definite possibility. And yeah, I've never really given a ton of thought to like her silver hair, but it does seem significant. Like it's a weird detail to have if there wasn't some reason for it.
Yeah, yeah. And there's like nothing that leads us to believe it has anything to do with her chronic illnesses. I mean, that's kind of what we dismiss it as, but like since they're based off real chronic illnesses, you know, anyways, just
Yeah.
interesting. I think it's more than fantasy flair. I think it's specifically about this.
And
And
it
this
did specifically, we didn't hear anything about her hair for a long time, and it was mentioned at the end of the book. So I feel like that is teasing something. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. So we have that. And then one of the biggest things that stood out to me in the reread, there is a few things, but one really big one was Violet is telling the story of hearing the fables from her dad as a kid and these like scary stories, and how one day her mom came home after a really long work trip where she had been traveling and her eyes were so bloodshot red, and Violet was screaming because she thought her mom was a venom, but it was just that she was so tired. So that really stood out to me on the second
Sure,
read
that makes
through,
sense.
having like read these fan theories. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
there's something potentially there. Potentially.
I could see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Um, yeah, so neither are huge spoilers. I was so worried that the spoiler you saw was like the end, finale of the book. You found out what was going to happen to Xaden. So,
Yeah, no. See, I feel like I easily could have stumbled across something big, but anytime I saw something remotely, like it was kind of stupid of me to scroll when I thought what I thought said the height difference between Satan and Violet, but I was like, there can't be spoilers in this. And then
yeah. Yeah,
so
it's there.
I was very intentional. I came across a fair amount of Fourth Wing content on like social media and did scroll away as quickly as possible. So I think that's the only reason I didn't get anything spoiled. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but I
Okay,
thought they were huge spoilers in my mind. I'm like, I know the biggest spoilers of the book. Like,
no, for sure. That makes sense. That makes a
yeah,
lot of sense.
yeah.
Um, okay, well, let's jump into the book. Let's jump in. Um, what is the first thing you wanna chat about today? I feel
Uh,
like we still can go like chronological order. So maybe what's the first like note you have if you have thoughts you want to talk about?
I didn't really organize my notes in the same way. My notes are a big mess, and I don't know. I don't know. What do you want to talk about first?
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Okay, I think let's start by this is right away as um we're picking up from where we left off last week. Um and specifically talk about the council meeting that happens. Um basically right in chapter 37 there. So the council is concerned about all the cadets that have just come, which makes a lot of sense. And specifically, they are convinced that Melgren is going to know where they are because there's a riot, like of 100 dragons that was like seen flying across the country, and we know it's like nearly a 2 day trip, or is a 2 day trip. So for 2 days, they flew over the country 100 dragons. I think it's ridiculous to say he wouldn't know.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, pretty obvious. And also like that's where Xaden is from, and he is the leader of this group. Like I think it's pretty safe to assume that they know where they are.
Yeah, like, do we really think like it's totally hidden because they believe it was just like destroyed? Like, if you saw, like, they would need one person to be like, they were headed in this direction for them to be
Yeah,
like, oh, they're setting up a base at the place that Xaden is the king of,
yeah, yeah.
you know? Anyways, it doesn't end up being that relevant, but still, yeah, it's just good to know. Um, yeah, at this point, this is also where we see kind of Zayden's first like power play, where he's like, if you have a problem with all these people showing up here, you can get out because this is my house. And then everyone is like, well, what are we going to do with them? And he's like, I don't know. We brought a bunch of professors. Maybe we just like keep them in school and just keep teaching them things.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know. It's so funny to me. Like, why is Zayden the one suggesting they continue to like run a school? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when like half these council members end up becoming professors. Like, what? It's just funny to me.
I also didn't realize that Violet wasn't aware of like Xaden being in charge of all of this, like until this point, because I didn't realize that it was the end of the last book that we learned that we learned a little bit of it, not the full details, but it was from Xaden's perspective and it wasn't talked about at all to Violet. So I didn't put that together until Violet was like, wait, what? So
Yeah, she kind of, right. Does she know overtly that it's his house? I feel like she knows it's his house.
yeah, but I highlighted here. I have it highlighted, and she like it's her realizing in the first chapter we read. It's this is all Xaden's. No noble has claimed the or has claimed Eratia. They all think the land is ruined or worse, cursed. It's all his, which she did not realize before. But she knew it was like Ryerson House.
Yeah. And she also realizes like the giant fancy chair that for whatever reason she is not connected is a throne is like Zayden's dad, and that Zayden is like next in line.
Yeah,
Like he's like a king, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we've got that.
I'm also
Um,
like, how does she not know this when she was a scribe and knew all this history? Did they erase that part? I don't know why they would erase that part. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, there's no reason to erase that the rebellion leader was like a king of his own country. If anything, that makes the rebellion side more compelling. Like, it was
Yeah,
about him seeking power.
yeah,
So then, why would you not keep that in the history? And then, why would Violet not know?
yeah. I didn't think about that till right now. So
Yeah, that's a really good point, honestly. Um, yeah. Okay, next I feel like we should talk about Andarna because she wakes up. That happens right here. Um, did you think when they were talking about her scales were looking kind of like green in the light or like her
or
looking
red or blue.
yeah, did you think anything about that?
Absolutely. I highlighted any single time it was mentioned, and I'm like, why is Violet not questioning this more? But I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I was like, is she part a different kind of dragon? Like, I didn't think like a completely new kind of dragon. That's not what I was thinking, but or
Yeah.
like some different mythical creature that we haven't even been introduced to, or yeah, that was driving me crazy, and I was worried we were not going to get an answer in this book, and I would have been so annoyed. Which we
Mhm.
have an answer, but we don't know a ton about. But
Yeah, we know the hint of an answer. And I feel like my deep dive internet sleuthing has me understand like a few things more. But really, like, we're all out here just guessing. Like, nobody knows.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah. I also think, like, let's just talk about Andarna's, like, character growth slash, like, cutscene new personality in this book. And I'm really intrigued to see if we get that much change. Like if Andarna has like distinct personality periods in like each book or like
yeah,
how that's gonna go because she has a very different temperament in this book. She still has all the love for Violet, but she is so sassy. And I feel like in the second half, we really get a lot of it.
yeah. I know. I am curious to see if that continues or not because they talk about it being like adolescence. But I'm also like, I don't know, Taryn's pretty sassy also. Like, she's just gonna have
Yeah,
a couple of really sassy dragons, you know? I don't know.
you know, it's maybe. Oh, darn it. Yeah, all the sassing Taryn is like so funny. It's
I
so
know.
funny. Mm-hmm.
I found myself highlighting a lot of their dialogue that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that they had to keep saying, "We don't eat our allies." That made me giggle.
I know she was so violent in this book,
Yeah.
which like
Or they had to like protect the sheep because she was going after the sheep, and
yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, so good. So good. Oh, yeah. Okay, we also I feel like I don't hear a lot of people talk about this. Um, but some of where Andarna gets more leeway is because she is her own den. Like, so the whole idea is that each den then has like a leader and like they are the head of disciplining like their den or family. And like whoever runs your den is like your superior that you have to check in with. And that's like the mid-level person. And then there's the Empreen, which is like all of dragons, like their general like rulings. Um, and so like it's like kind of alluded to. I didn't even highlight it in this one. I think I was reading so fast. But like Violet is assuming that's like Taryn. And like and it turns out like she gets more leeway and there's a couple things where she's like you don't speak for me or I make my own decisions. Like we get a couple different like comments from Andarna throughout the book, and when you're first reading it you're like, oh, she's so sassy, she's not letting this like old Taryn tell her what to do. But actually it's like she knows Taryn does not technically have any authority over her because she is the den leader for her own like species of dragon. So she's like, you can't tell me what to do. I run my den, which I just think is so funny.
I'm also curious, like, who of the dragons knows about that? Because I mean, the Empyrean evidently knows because that's why she was allowed to bond, is what was said. And
Mm-hmm.
then the dragon who was like her den leader, but not really because she's her own den leader, that I can't remember its name, that starts with a C. And if I had it in front of me, I'd probably mispronounce it anyway. Um, that dragon knew, but it seems like no one else knew.
Yeah.
What the vibe you got too?
Yeah. I don't think a ton of the dragons know.
Because Taryn didn't know,
Uh huh. Yeah.
which we really didn't get a lot from like what happened with that, did we? I don't remember.
Not tons.
Yeah.
Yeah, not really. We don't hear a ton of the dragons reacting to that because
Yeah.
it's like found out in the middle of like the battle.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, I was gonna say something else with that. Oh, yeah, just to think about like the timeline, like Taryn is 200, yes?
Yeah, I want to say between 150 and 200, somewhere in
Okay,
there.
no, he's like halfway through his life, so he's either like a yeah, yeah,
Now I
look it
can
up.
Google these things without having to be worried about spoilers.
I know. Yeah, because then we know either the average dragon lifespan is 300 or 400 years. And we know Andarna has been waiting 650 years to hatch specifically, which means that we're like a few generations, removed from people knowing,
Yeah.
or dragons knowing, not people.
I just tried to Google it and there are two very different answers. One says he's over 100 years old and is 50 years older than Segale, and the other one says that he's estimated to be around 500, but that's the answer. I think that's just wrong.
That's just wrong. I think maybe he's 100.
Yeah, it just says over 100.
Okay. We know he's halfway through his life, though. They talk about it in Battle Brief in Fourth Wing.
Oh,
So
here's someone on Reddit did the math. He's apparently 127.
great, great.
Sigale's
There.
77.
Okay, perfect.
I also, yeah, thought that was crazy. Did we know when we learned about Andarna, the fact that she waited 650 years to hatch? Did we know dragons could wait to hatch? I did not retain that if we learned that earlier on. Okay.
No, no.
Okay.
Yeah, and honestly, I wonder how common that is. We don't know, but like based on some fan theories we'll jump into later, I think there is an argument to be made that Andarna specifically was allowed to choose when she hatched because she was the last of this kind and they wanted to ensure there was one of this seventh dragon species to be around
Yeah.
when like the venom came back.
Yeah. It'll be
So
interesting to see what we learn about that or don't.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so we'll talk about more about the fan theory later. I feel like there's better sections to get into it. The other thing I want to note about Andarna is we specifically get a note that she is currently 2/3 the size of Sigale. 2/3. So she's like already like a pretty big dragon, and she still is growing. Um, which did make me like your theory, Amy, that she's going to be the biggest dragon.
I also was surprised we learned that Melgren's dragon is a good 5 feet taller than Taryn, which kind of blew my mind. I'm like, I knew he was the biggest, but Taryn's the second biggest. I wasn't expecting that big of a difference. But also in regards to Indarna and her size, and I'm assuming she's still growing. I am curious to see if it changes because we learn in this section about like her physical limitations and that she like they're theorizing that she wouldn't be able to have a rider, and I'm curious if that is going to stay true or not. I also thought it was interesting. I felt like with that with Indarna was kind of like a reflection upon like Violet and how she has physical limitations but has very like unique abilities that are very helpful in other ways. So I kind of liked that.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And I think that's going to be true of Indarna also. Again, we'll get into that theory later. But yeah, I think Andarna is going to have like special powers beyond typical dragon powers, even. So that's my theory that I agree with as a fan theory.
I
Um,
don't know. That did make me think, but this might be what you're referring to, is talking about Violet's potential second signet. Is that what you're talking about getting into later, or
no,
no?
but
Do you want to
we
talk about that
can
now or later?
let's talk about it. Let's talk
Okay.
about it.
Because this was a couple of the TikToks that I watched were talking about this, and Rebecca Yarros was asked in an interview if she mentioned or if it's talked about Violet's second signet in the third book, and she's like, it's talked about in the second book. She's like, I talked about it so much in the second book, and that just had me questioning what it was. And there was a lot of theories, but the one that I liked the most that I think it could be is something about her being like immortal or something because of how often she says, I will not die today, because she says that a lot. So, yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I don't have I don't have like strong theories necessarily about what Violet's second signet is. I do want to talk about, we can jump into, I saw the most interesting theory, which then reading this time, I really feel like is accurate, that Violet is not a lightning wielder. Like her first signet is wrong, and we've just like put her in this category, which I remember we talked about last book. I was like, I'm kind of like bummed, like it feels so similar to her mom. We've talked about it so much less unique than all these other people. And we get kind of a taste of this. This is going to jump forward a little bit, but talking about her uh, powers. So she starts doing her training with Felix, right? Yeah. Yeah, chapter 40. We start talking about this. So Violet starts training with Felix, and he is pretty shocked that they've done like no training in her signet beyond like fire big lightning bolts, as many as you can, and that no one has like had her do like accuracy testing, or like she's not trying to aim, she's not trying to control like how much power she exudes, nothing. um and I'm not sure if it's in this or the next section where she's doing training with him and he brings the oh no, it's in this one that he brings the like glass, the conduit glass orb thing. Um, but still, it might be later when they're training. But there's a specific line that Felix says that uh, he says that Violet is pure power and that she uses lightning because that's what she's most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And there's several times in like in Fourth Wing too, the first time she uses it, the line is like, I am the sky, I am the storm, I am infinite, is what she says. And so someone pointed out the idea that Violet is actually just like power herself, like she is pure power, she creates like power is her whole thing, but that she's most comfortable wielding lightning, which to me then makes sense because she's seen her mom's signet of storms her whole life. And so maybe there's something like instinctive or genetic to the like storm component, maybe. But this would open a lot of very interesting doors if she is pure power and Xaden is Venin. I think they could do some really interesting things with that. And I jumped ahead of myself a little bit, but that would be like a reason, like, why does the sage want Violet specifically? You know?
And
Uh,
Xaden.
huh?
And Xaden.
Yeah, but does he overtly want Xaden? Mostly we
Well,
know he,
Xaden seems pretty sure about it at the end of the book, and we don't really get that reasoning why he thinks that.
yeah, I guess.
I mean,
He just,
it's overtly that he wants Violet, like that is stated by other Venin, but
yeah,
Xaden comes in like for the battle saying that they know that he wants him as well. But
okay.
we never get to hear why he thought that.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
All right, well, that maybe makes it less strong. But then the theory being like, well, if her power is not lightning wielding, but it's like she's actually just a source of like raw power, uh, then that would be a reason Venin would want her because that's their whole thing.
yeah,
Is
I think that's a solid theory. I think that also is interesting with the theory of Lilith being Venin when she's pregnant, because, we hear a lot about how the powers reflect on the person who has them. And I don't really see how just lightning would really reflect on who she is as a person other than like her mom. And
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
yeah,
I like that theory.
yeah, yeah. Super interesting. And I just think that sets up more interesting things in the next book. But I don't think that's saying like that's her second signet. So I don't know. I just see all of the obsessive TikToks of people who've been doing the rereads, like obsessively taking notes, trying to figure out what her signet is. And so I
Hmm.
think it's so funny that Rebecca Yarros like would just put that out there. I don't know. I feel like Rebecca
Yeah.
Yarros
Oh, go
also
ahead.
say to drive people crazy, like she can be cruel in the best way.
Yeah, she said that in the second book. I literally wrote down the quote because I was like, That's very interesting that they
Yeah,
asked her about like if it would be in the third book, and she said it was in the first book, and she said it was in there so much. And I'm like, okay, so she had to have talked about it quite a few times. So I
yeah.
don't know. It's
Wait,
interesting.
in the first book or in the second book?
The second book.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
She didn't specifically say anything about if it was in the first one or not, but
Okay. Do you have any theories for what it is?
like I said, I liked the theory about her being immortal. I don't know if that's very likely or not, but I liked that theory. People also talked about the potential of her having distance wielding, which is briefly mentioned. I don't even remember where that is mentioned in the book, but it is mentioned, and I think it's basically similar to like apparition or like winnowing, from what
Mhm.
I understand. So that'd be interesting. There was also people talking about how it could be something like reflecting and Darna, like her ability to camouflage and stuff. But I'm like, but it doesn't it come from the person more than the dragon? So I don't know about that theory. But,
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, now I'm thinking I'm like, I wonder if it's something like, is there something that's been happening with like an interaction with Zayden that we're like missing because we're just assuming it's around like them being in love? Is there something with, yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
Interesting.
Also, something that stuck out to me, which is later on, and maybe has, I don't know, it very possibly has nothing to do with that, but was like her conversation with Dane and about how they've changed so much,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't really know how that would tie to a power, but I was just trying to think of significant moments that it could
Yeah.
be, but I don't know.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just throwing this out there. Uh, because she has correctly guessed a lot of people's signets, maybe she can sense other people's signets.
Yeah.
Nah, maybe.
Someone
Not.
said that they thought it was something to do with like problem solving or something, and I'm like, no, I think she's just a smart person who's a scribe and is good at detecting those things. Someone did say something about like mirroring potentially could be it, like being able to mirror other people's signets, which would be very cool, but
Yeah, interesting. All right. Um, okay. So, to kind of bridge the gap a little bit, um, so we talk about the ward stones a little bit in chapter 28, 38. Excuse me. Um, Violet thinks she figures it out at this point. She has not correctly. This is when she's still interpreting the text as uh, like blood instead of breath, which we find out later. Uh, so we also learn in here that another riot is approaching and that Teeny is at the head of the riot, aka Mira. I have to know, Amy, did you think this was your theory coming true that Mira and Violet were going to have to fight each other?
in this moment I was like, no, she's coming. Like it's gonna be allies. I was pretty sure. I was excited to see what happened with Brennan though. That's what I was thinking about this whole time. And
Yeah,
was not disappointed in what happened. I thought it was pretty funny punching him in the face.
yeah.
So I'm like, she handled that news a little differently than Violet did, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Okay, also, we just have to take a moment because I think this is one of the visuals that sticks with me so much in this book is Violet runs out, just Violet, to confront all these dragons with their riders landing in front of her, and then Taryn lands behind her with his head right, it's inches from her shoulder, roars and then breathes fire out to all of them. Like, that is such an insane. I cannot wait for the show to do this moment. And if they don't do it justice, there will
is
be
there a show
rioting.
happening?
I'm
This
just
is
going
like
to
the
say.
second time you've mentioned it, and I'm like, is there a show?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
there's a show. It's coming.
Or is it going to be another
Yeah,
act thing and
Rebecca,
they're not going to happen?
I mean, Rebecca Yarros has talked about it a lot more than SJM. I feel like we know Hulu bought the rights to Akatar to make into a series, and then that was before the strikes all happened. Um, so everything got put on hold, but Amazon Prime bought the rights to the Fourth Wing series, and are apparently making it into a series. And Rebecca Yarros has like continued to talk about it, and she addressed it. I think in the Elle interview that just came out, she talked about it. It was one of the things she talked about, like how crazy her like rise to fame has been. Um, yeah, and I think they bought the rights in early 2004. So we just don't know anything because it's still so early. I don't think they've officially done casting yet, even. But yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we also find out, I thought this was kind of a twist when I first read it, about Violet's mom is the one who like goes to Mira's post, like where she's stationed, and tells all of them and gives them the option. And then Violet makes a comment that she's surprised Melgren would let half of them get away, but I don't think it's Melgren. I think this is Violet's mom going against Melgren.
I was so confused here about what was going on because I thought I knew that she was Venom and was like secretly like against them, and I just could not figure out her motivations and what was going on at all. But I think you're right. I think it absolutely was her mom that let them get away, and yeah. And it makes more sense now, knowing everything that she would do that. Um, and I did like tear up when we got that little excerpt from like a letter that wasn't sent, I think, from Lilith to her husband saying like she would like sacrifice everything for her children. I just was like, oh, and she would, because she did.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think if her mom is Venom, I think it's going to be a reveal in book 3. And it's going to be something like someone like Zayden's going crazy, trying to stay good and balance that he's Venom. And then someone is going to be like, it's been done once before, like in a dramatic fantasy twist. And it'll be Violet's mom.
Yeah.
That would be
I
the reveal.
I also still feel like there is something up with her dad's death that we're not getting and is not accurate.
Oh,
But I don't know what. Don't know what at all, but there's something
for
weird.
for sure. Yeah, we'll talk.
And
I mean,
I also definitely want to hear the theories you talked about last week that there was theories around Zayden's mom because we learned a little more about her this week. Not a lot, but a little. And I'm like, that's got to come back at some point too. And I just, yeah. I'm really
yeah,
excited that I read this book and only have to wait 3 days for the next book. I can't imagine having to wait like over a year. That would drive me. I don't know how I'm gonna do it with the next book. I'm sure it'll end on a cliffhanger.
yeah, it was rough. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Oh man. Um, a do to do. Let's see. What should we talk about next? Um, okay, we can talk a little bit. It's obviously, you guys know, Amy correctly guessed, my two least favorite tropes of all time: miscommunication, love triangles. 1 and 2. I hate them. I hate them so much. Every now and then there's a love triangle that is maybe okay, but mostly I hate them. Like Throne of Glass, the love triangle is subtle enough that it didn't bother me. That happens in the first like 2 books, 3 books, depending on how you're reading it. But otherwise, they drive me nuts also. Okay, but let's talk about that. So specifically, one of the first things we get as a reoccurring theme, but it's one of the things that comes up uh, more overtly a little bit earlier is Violet getting angry with Xaden that Xaden is wanting to like protect her and keep her safe so often. Um, which I think there's like lots to unpack here. I think Xaden handles it better than other fantasy boys do, but I specifically am interested um, on your thoughts around this idea, Amy, because we see this kind of reoccurring in fantasy of like fantasy like male that's like mysterious and all powerful, and then his thing becomes I have to keep you, precious woman, safe. uh and then like she's very mad and feels controlled, right? But we see this across the genre um a lot. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts, there's anything you want to add, you're thinking about any other characters. Obviously, we talk a lot about this in Twilight. It's like the main plot of the book. But it comes up a lot in A Court of Thorns and Roses, and all the subsequent books. It doesn't come up that much in Throne of Glass, but she's an assassin, so you know.
Yeah, I like didn't feel like that as much with this book because I mean in Fourth Wing we get there's Dane and there's Xaden, and Dane is obviously very much trying to protect her from everything, and Xaden kind of steps in and is the one who's like let her do her own thing kind of. So like I feel like that's my initial impression of him, so that kind of like stuck in my mind. He definitely does protect her from certain things. I think particularly in the first book, a lot of it was justified because he was aware of Dane's signet, and so he didn't want her to like have that information get out kind of thing. I do have to go back and reevaluate this all now that we know Xaden has another signet. I don't know about all that. That makes I haven't given it a ton of thought either, and that
Yeah.
might change how I see things, but
Mm.
um yeah, I don't know. The thing that really bothered me with like Xaden when it came onto this was him being like, "Oh, you just have to ask me." And I'm like, "That's not how that works." And you can't just expect her to come up with exact questions to ask you, and that's the only time you tell her information. That drove me crazy. Um, yeah. And
Yeah.
overall, as a trope, I do not like that. I don't like it. I think it's better in this book because, like I said in the beginning, he's the one who's like telling other people that they should let her do her own thing kind of thing. And I
Mhm.
also think that she is a much more informed female main character when it comes to fantasies because of like her scribe background. She has like a lot of knowledge versus in like ACOTAR or Twilight. They're brand new into this world and don't know anything about it at all and have no way of getting information other than through this person. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I also think an important difference here is while Xaden is very powerful, we see less of the discrepancies, or excuse me, they have a bigger discrepancy in their like abilities in book one. But book one is where he actually is more like prove yourself,
yeah.
handle it like your own way. Where in book two, they're, I mean, Violet and Xaden are considered two of the most powerful of the top six riders.
Yeah.
Like they're much more even in that sense. And this is where the book that he's more protective of her, and trying to keep her from like physical harm more. And maybe that is less about him wanting to keep her safe. I mean, it's motivated by him wanting to keep her safe, but more a reflection of Xaden feels like out of control in this
Yeah.
environment. Like he can't keep a handle on everything, where he was like so confident ruling the roost at the school.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think that's definitely a super valid point. And he obviously like went through school like at Basgiath and was familiar with that situation. I think it'd be easy to like say, oh, well, he didn't love her then, but he has made the point a couple times that he has loved her for a long time, and like it was before like that all started. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's him not having control and like never being in this situation and not knowing what is going to come of it kind of thing versus at school. Even though there was people murdering people all the time, he's like he knew he couldn't like just protect her by like hiding her from that stuff. He knew that she had to like get
Yeah.
her own like strength and like get good at combat and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah. 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 So, yeah, definitely interesting. Um, yeah, and I think more of the trope generally is like indestructible, super powerful male, still human 17-year-old girl. So,
yeah.
yeah,
I do
that
like
is,
that they're also in their 20s in this one. I'm like, I don't like reading about teenagers. I don't care if they're legally adults. I don't like.
yeah, yeah. I know. It's so funny that like that's an improvement. They're older characters for
Yeah.
fantasy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, interesting. Interesting there. Okay, while we're talking about miscommunication and love triangles, let's start talking about Kat. Um, I was glad, in my memory, Kat was a more prominent figure in the books, and she definitely is causing a lot of shit, you know? And she is a fairly prominent character in the second half, but like I had no idea. I wouldn't have said two of my least favorite tropes if I had remembered that we don't even meet Kat till chapter 37 or later.
Well, we meet her briefly in our first section. We met her because Violet goes with Zayden when they drop off supplies. But
Right.
yeah, we don't like see much of her until this second section. And I was guessing throughout the book who the love triangle was going to be. And I was curious if you even, like, when I finished the book, I figured you meant Kat, but I wasn't 100% sure because there wasn't any, like, active thing going on between the two of them kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
But
it's not Zayden is not interested in Kat at all
yeah,
anymore, but it's the same, like, nonetheless, it's like similar dynamics because Violet is so like hung up on her like jealousy and insecurity and like in some ways convinced that Kat's going to be able to win Zayden back in some ways, you know? So, yeah.
I'm also curious to see what happens with Kat as a character as we go on, because as far as it is in this book, I did not like her as a character. I mean, obviously you're not supposed to like her, but I also didn't like that she was introduced and like the thing that united Sloane and Violet was their hatred for Kat. I'm like, that is a very stereotypical like girl thing to do where you team up because you hate the same girl and it's just like hating on girls for no reason kind of thing. And so I didn't love that. And I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt because I was like, Violet's being biased here, but Kat was kind of horrible in some ways. So then I'm like, maybe she is horrible. Then she got better. I don't know. I'm curious to see where her character goes. And in the end, there's kind of a little bit of a truce between the two of them, a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I also want to see more of Serena. I really like Serena's character and her dynamic with Violet. So
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think it's also important to note that Kat really isn't that into Zayden. Her
yeah.
like obsession is she believes that she is like the rightful queen of like this kingdom and she wants to be a queen. So she is also like power hungry, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely interesting.
And her power is kind of crazy. And I'm interested to see that more. I don't know. There's some crazy powers that some of these people have, and I'm like, that's why it's like Violet's is lightning. I don't know, but maybe it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, maybe it's not. Also, I'm like, okay, I get like even though I'm like lightning is just like a basic, it's not like as nuanced or like unique. Like it doesn't feel like, whoa, that's so original that Rebecca Yarros thought of that. But she is like the one of the few things that can kill venom. So
That is very true. Very, very true. But
yeah, which does make her then one of the most powerful, if not the most valuable rider at
yeah, her
this.
power just isn't something that like comes up in like some type of like social situation, for lack of better words, where it can be utilized in some way other than killing something, pretty much, versus most people's powers are useful in some way like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Mm. Yeah. Uh yeah, really interesting. We'll see. We'll see what happens with old Catriona.
mhm.
What a name.
I also did
Um,
mention briefly about how it was kind of the hatred for Cat that united Sloane and Violet, but also I did kind of see it coming that with the letters from Liam that they would say something about Violet, and I did like that Sloane and her are finally getting along. So
yeah,
that was nice.
yeah. Hmm.
Because I like Sloane as a character, but I did not like how much she hated Violet. So
Yeah. Yeah, I that was just like a satisfying nice part in the middle of all the like turmoil, you know.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Okay, while we're chatting about Cat, let's talk about Takaris. Is that what we're calling him? The Viscount Takaris?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of go. They end up going to Viscount Takaris's estate or castle or manor or whatever we're calling it. Um, and you may remember from last week, he has the luminary. He will give them the luminary in exchange for watching Violet wield her powers, which Zayden says is too dangerous because he's going to be tricky about it. Violet ends up basically what prompts this is then there is a raid on one of the bases because um, they find out in Battle Brief that news has leaked that they left Bezgaeth. Um, and so now these citizens know they're not going to get weapons from Zayden anymore. So they're starting to raid because they're out of like desperation. Violet feels super guilty about that and is like, the one thing I can control is to get a luminary so that we can start forging weapons, etc., etc. So she teams up with Mira and Brennan and decides they're just gonna sneaky sneak there. But it doesn't work because Zayden's already there. Because, oh, hindsight, because he can read intentions.
Yep, didn't think about that. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I know. I feel like I already want to do a reread of these books with the information that I have to go back and be like, oh, there was that. Which I also do want to hear about. You talked about the first book, there being things and having to do with fan theories, but maybe you already talked about that too. But anyway.
yeah, yeah, definitely the biggest being, yeah, the Venom,
Yeah,
Violet's mom being
okay. Yeah, yeah.
that's the biggest one to talk
Okay.
about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. So they go to Takaris's. Guess what? Zayden was right. He was being tricky.
He was indeed. I didn't see it coming and I felt like I should have. I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, I did not expect a venom to come out of that. What was it? Chest or what was
Yeah, the like I don't what is it?
I
It's
had a
made of
wardrobe. Was it a wardrobe? I had a wardrobe pictured in my head. I don't know if that's what it actually was.
I think it's a chest.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Ribestad chest.
Okay.
The same one that Zayden's father had brought to Takaris when they were in negotiations for a highly valuable item in the past. Okay, this I want to talk about. Is it addressed? I don't even remember if this is like fan theory things, if this comes from my brain, if this is in the book. I don't know. I've lost all recollection of where anything comes from. Sorry, everyone. Okay. So what is this chest made of that it can contain the venom successfully, and it's something from Xaden's dad. I just think there's something there. I think both Xaden and Violet's dads have more information than either of them do, and died too early to be able to pass on the information to deal with the venom. But I think they
Yeah.
both are hiding info on it.
Yeah, I also like the only thing that comes to my mind is like if there's some type of runes on it or something, you think that would have been mentioned though, but like that's the only thing that we're aware of that can give like items magical powers kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, I want to know a lot more about their parents. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
all of
Mm-hmm.
them. All of them. And now I feel like I need to rethink all my thoughts that I had about Lilith because I thought she still could have been Venom the whole time. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if she was a venom the whole time, or like part venom or something, I do think like she has been like, I think she's still motivated to be good when it comes to her kids, at least, you know?
Yeah.
But
I'm also it'll be interesting with the next book because we'll learn kind of more about the Venom, obviously, now that Satan is one, which I'm really worried about. I don't
yeah,
know.
you
Because
and
what do we
every,
really know about Venom other than their like where they draw power from and like why are they all like inherently evil, you know?
yeah. So, well, we know from the book that a venom is someone who chooses to take power like from the earth instead
Mhm.
of like being siphoned it through like a dragon or a griffin. So they're like taking it into their own control and siphoning power. And by doing that, it corrupts their soul. And then as soon as you've done it once, the more you do it, the more your soul becomes like corrupted, is what it like
Yeah.
says in the book. Um,
Wouldn't
but
it
then
be easy enough then for him to just not do it again since he already has the power of, like I
yeah,
don't
I'm very curious how this is going to interact with him and Segale, because as far as we know, this is only the second person who's been a Venin and a rider.
yeah,
Yeah,
potentially if Lilith also was, but yeah, we only know for sure that there's Jack Barlow, right? That's who you're talking about?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, because their powers come from their dragons, like they're siphoning their dragons' powers.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how that whole dynamic is gonna go, and like what that means, and does Sigale give it willingly? There's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
And clearly, like, Bade chose to bond with Jack. He was already Venom, right? It's from
Yeah,
whenever,
that isn't or wait, when do they say yeah, I guess he was Venom at that point, wasn't he? I think they said that.
yeah, it said he was Venom already when he challenged Violet, which I'm
I was
assuming,
wondering if he has been Venom since we were introduced to him, because he's unhinged from the beginning.
yeah,
So
maybe.
I'm curious about that if we'll learn more about that. But that is really interesting that Bade chose to bond with him. And also the fact that is it just because he's Venom that he didn't die when Bade died? That means Sagale could die and Xaden wouldn't. I don't think that's gonna happen because that would cause Violet to die. Unless she's immortal. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, that is okay. One of the fan theories, because Rebecca Yarros has said she's not afraid to kill off main characters, which everyone
Which I
assumes.
like. I like that.
Yeah, and
I mean, I don't, but I do.
yeah, everyone has assumed that means she's killing Xaden. But I saw the worst theory that made me so mad because it might. I don't know. It's interesting, but
I'm excited. I want to hear.
it makes me so upset because the theory is that they're gonna kill off Tarn. Uh,
Be surprised by that. I mean, she has two dragons. I wouldn't be surprised if they killed one of her two dragons.
yeah, okay, because then the idea is that both Sigale and Tern could die because now Xaden won't die as a Venin and Violet will have Andarna.
And then so yeah, we don't know a lot about this because I was gonna say, so then if Sigale dies, does Xaden lose the powers that he had? I'm guessing probably, but we don't know that for a fact because no rider has survived their dragon dying other than Jack Barlow.
Right. And then with the
But
temptation,
that's an answer to last week when we were like, why'd they bring back Jack Barlow? Like, I
yeah,
mean, that seems pretty significant.
yep,
Hmm. So
yeah,
many
but
questions.
I don't want it to be true. I love Taryn.
Yeah, I know. I don't want that to be true either, but I could see it happening.
I'd rather they kill Xaden than Taryn. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, I was so convinced that Xaden was gonna die, but now that I think about it, now he's Venom, so he's more difficult to kill. So maybe he won't. I don't know.
Or Violet will have to kill him.
I
So
can't.
much can happen. We have three more books of this.
What if she like has to kill him for some reason and she assumes that she's gonna die, but then she doesn't die because she's immortal? I'm really stuck on the immortal thing. There's a lot. Okay, we don't need to throw out all my theories that I'm coming up with the top of my.
Interesting. Yeah. Um yeah, so we there's a lot there. Let's jump back
Yeah,
to
rein it
uh
in.
yeah, to Karis. Uh
Yeah, that's what
mhm.
we were talking about. I forgot that.
That's
I
the
have questions about Takaris and what his motivations are. Like, I just don't get him as a character,
nope.
and I'm curious if we'll learn more about him. Because it's like, oh, he just wants to collect a bunch of stuff. That's kind of what we know about him, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, it'd be fun if I surprised her with an attack by these Venom, which, yeah.
Okay, here's how I'm viewing Takaris, although I think Takaris is maybe more evil than this character, but I'm imagining him as Boomy from Avatar The Last Airbender. Have you oh, you don't know,
I don't.
Amy.
I don't, unfortunately.
Well, everyone listening, please DM me and tell me how fascinating that theory is. Uh, I'm gonna keep going with it anyways. Sorry, Amy, but
Okay.
because he's like a quirky old man. Now, Takara specifically, I feel like this eclectic, like he's like just hoarding things that he feels like are special or unique, but he's kind of like unhinged, and so he doesn't really care about like the danger to Violet. Is one side because he's just like so intrigued by the like uniqueness. The flip side of like what's up with Zakaris that I could see is he knows something more about Violet's power or suspects something, like maybe there's some kind of like legend or something, and so he's pretty confident she's going to survive, but he's trying to do like a power move with Xaden because he also clearly does care about other people. He's taken in all the flyers. Um, so I don't know. There's something there. There's something there. We don't know enough about him. Either way, he releases a venom on Violet. It nearly kills her. Then Xaden nearly kills Takaris. Um, but in the end, he's the one who convinces them he'll give them the luminary if they also take all the flyers to be part of their new school, quote unquote.
And that was their whole deal, right? There wasn't anything else a part of that deal, was there? Okay.
Yep, that's it. And
Okay.
I don't even think it's necessarily, well, I mean, he does say their school is like destroyed. So it is kind of for the school, but it's mostly for like sanctuary though.
Yeah. I know. I'm very curious about him. I'm sure, I feel like we're gonna get more of him. I
Yeah.
also was definitely expecting when they went to where Takaris is, since it was on the coast, I thought we were going to get something from General Atos, which we kind of got nothing from him since he left, because he was on a coastal outpost, which I feel like was significant that they gave us that detail, but maybe it was just to say that he was like far away from Nabari. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
our
I
best guess.
hadn't thought about it at all until you brought it up, and now I've noticed how
And
much they're talking about the islands.
yeah, they talk about them a lot. There's going to be something significant because they also talk about when they're at Ryerson House, they talk about their map looks the same as the one that they saw when they were at Basgiath, except it has all of the islands. And they mentioned like I think like 5 islands in like 13 countries or something like that. I don't know. It's like a significant amount of land, it sounds like. And my
Yeah.
question is if there's going to be like other people that they end up working with or against. So I don't know. That'll be interesting
Yeah.
if it comes into play.
Yeah, she's definitely setting up a lot more world building to come, which
Mhm.
is kind of in Rebecca Yarros' style, at least with the first two books, is really like just like slowly opening the door to her world building, which is fairly complicated. Like, honestly, like I would say it's more complicated fantasy world building than like ACOTAR at this
Yeah,
point for book
I think
two,
so.
you know?
And I think
Yeah.
it kind of like has to be when you have a character that is like born into that world, because like it's not something that they're just being introduced to and like learning all this information. Like they've been in it and are still learning all this new information. So,
Mhm. Yeah. And I think like it's interesting because Violet is not coming in as a human who has no idea about the magical world. She's coming in as what she believes is more informed and
mm,
is more informed than her peers, but her entire like education system and government have been like hiding things from her, and it's been a massive cover up. So what she knows is wrong. So then it's like her uncovering the truth is how we learn about the bigger world building in the story, which is pretty interesting,
yeah,
particularly for like a first person perspective.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Oh wait, they end up taking 100 flyer cadets in, which is about the number of students they have to begin with. So, like from Basgiath. So, yeah, yeah. Which again, you now have 100 dragons, 200 students, and 100 griffins at one place.
Do we have an idea of how many Griffins and Griffin Riders didn't make it? There wasn't that significant of a number, was it?
I don't think
Scalpel.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think we don't totally know.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um. Let's see. What's the next thing? Do you have anything next you want to talk about?
Um,
Yeah, lots of like cat being the worst in the next couple sections. Ooh, I found what I think we should talk about next.
go for it.
Okay. It's the rune class they have.
Mm-hmm. That's significant.
Yes. So they have a lesson on runes after they've successfully made it back to Ryerson House. Um, and Professor Trissa explains how there's like strands of magic that can be pulled from individuals' power and then woven into, they make it sound more complicated, but runes, like we know what runes are, okay? So then made into runes, so you take the strand of power, form it into a rune, and then you can put that on an object, but maybe also a living thing. Like I guess it's a rune stone inside uh the wyvern. So no, they're putting it on inanimate objects. Yeah.
Yeah, which I knew something was up with this from the beginning because I was questioning it in Fourth Wing when they had the runes on the daggers. I'm like, that's got to be something important. So
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't completely surprised by that. But it's interesting that anyone can use them and they don't have to have like lesser magic or anything to use them. But
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very interesting. They also make the difference of, or the distinction between alloys and runes. You may remember alloys are like the things specifically in that they need to melt with the luminary that can hold power and then kill the venom. That's what makes those daggers able to kill venom. Runes do not just have generic power, they're not storing power generally, they are storing power to do one specific thing.
mhm,
So, just to note.
mhm.
Um,
I'm kind of curious because this was something I noted back in Fourth Wing, um, because so Violet got the dagger, and then I think it was when they were stealing the map that she noticed on her mom's desk there was a dagger like hers that also had ruins. And I'm like, I wonder if that's gonna come back at some point, or if like what the significance of her seeing that was. Like, and it's interesting thinking about the theory of her being Venom. So I was wondering why she would have the dagger with the runes on it if she was Venom. Yeah, so I'm just curious if that will come back because if the runes are something significant on there, I don't know.
yeah, I
Something related to her power. I don't know.
yeah, I had thought initially that that was just like proof confirming her mom knew about the venom, but I'm kind of second guessing that logic now because just because the dagger has runes doesn't mean it's one of the ones that would allow you to kill venom. I had just like, I don't know if it's said
I
or I
also thought it was something to do with her knowing about Venom, but I think it specifically said something about how it had runes on it, which
yeah,
is, you know, what makes
yeah,
me there might be something up with it, but who knows?
yeah. Interesting. Um, yeah. So we find out that the runes on Violet's dagger, Xaden put there himself, and that is how she unlocked the door when she was being tortured.
Yeah, which
Mhm.
I knew that it was something, but didn't know what, which glad we got
Yeah.
an answer on that.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing to talk about with the runes is the rune stone that Xaden keeps on his like nightstand. So Violet asks about this right after he's telling her about the runes that he put on Violet's dagger. And we find out that the rune is a rune of protection against uh, being killed with dragon fire, and that all the rebellion kids were given one of these protection stones and held them in their hands with their parents, aka the intention was not to let the children live and have them then enroll in the Riders Quadrant. The intention was to kill the parents with their tiny children, but all the kids held these stones, and that's why they have the relic sleeve, because then the Dragonfire imprinted that relic on them where the rune kept them safe.
Yeah, that's
What?
pretty crazy. I honestly forgot that even happened. I forgot that we learned that, which is insane because that's huge. Like, at first, when you were talking about it, I'm like, what are you talking about? But yeah, it's very, very significant.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of just throw it in. It's like
Yeah.
one
Literally,
paragraph.
you can tell a lot happened when we read this week because that literally Totally forgot. Totally forgot.
Yeah. Uh, so crazy. So
Yeah.
crazy. Um, yeah. Do you want to talk about? Oh, I can't decide. I can't decide. There's some fan theories around Brennan.
Yeah,
And
let's do it.
okay, one of the things is about apparently, now I missed this because I didn't read this theory till after I had finished Iron Flame, or I would have been looking for it. But apparently, it mentions that Brennan has a scar on his hand shaped like a rune. Did you catch this at all?
Maybe, but I think I had other questions about like Brennan and was thinking about things that didn't really. I didn't. Yeah, I don't recall. I wouldn't have been able to be like, oh yeah, he has that scar. But maybe when I was reading it, I caught it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Is there theories
yeah.
on what that is then?
Um, there's so many theories about Brennan.
So was there theories as to what the rune on his hand was then?
No,
No, there was
no,
nothing.
that's not the theory. That's not the theory.
Oh, okay. What was the
People just
theory?
think that's hella. It's suspicious. It's suspicious.
Sure, yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So here's the thing. People think Brennan, they think he's bad for sure. They think he's going to either betray everyone. Uh, they think he's maybe the sage. Some people think he's the sage. They think he was attacked by a venom. They think Noelin, Taryn's previous rider, was attacked by a venom. And then, okay, this is a theory on what the rune is. Some people think that Noelin, Taryn's previous rider, did not die in the normal sense, but became a sage. He's the sage. And Brennan, he like went to attack Brennan, not help Brennan, and then put the rune on Brennan in the same way that Venin had put the runes in the Wyvern.
Yeah. I am realizing we haven't seen Brennan like interact with any Venom, have we? Because he was not fighting them in the battle. Hmm. I did have
Yeah,
questions about Brennan. I thought that he was like I mean, he was being stubborn and he did end up going to Besgaiath, but he wasn't going to. And yeah, there's something up for sure. And I do question about like his death that happened and what really went on there. And hmm.
mm-hmm. Yeah, so people have a lot of things. The other factors are because Brennan is supposedly one of the best menders there's ever been. So people are saying he could continually mend himself so that people wouldn't know he's Venin, is part of the idea. The other thing that people are very suspicious of is his dragon. Marb? Is that how we pronounce?
I think it's Marv, like with a V, I think.
Okay.
It's BH, isn't it? I think that's how that's pronounced.
Okay, yeah. Um yes, but he is an orange dragon, which thus far people are saying if you have an orange dragon, you are absolutely going to betray people or are evil. I don't think we can make that leap, or they wouldn't let people bond orange dragons.
Yeah. I feel like each dragon den like has their own kind of like personality traits kind of thing, and that might be more common for orange dragons, but I don't think it's a given.
Yeah, it has been fairly true. Obviously, Solus, we finally get the thing that I kept being like, Solus
Also,
finally comes up.
when they killed Solus, I completely was confusing Solus and Bait. I'm like, oh, so Jack Barlow's dead now? It's like, nope, that's not what happened.
Yeah, wrong,
Yeah.
wrong person. Um, yeah, so we'll get into that more. But to stay on topic with Brennan, the other thing is that apparently Marv is we already talked about in our first episode about the names, and how most of the dragons have Scottish Gaelic names, and they are direct words in Scottish Gaelic. So, for example, Tairn is thunder, and there's a bunch of examples. Bezgaiath is like Death College or something like
And
that.
Darna is second honor.
Uh-huh. Yes. So, and Marv, I believe, is death. But wait, now I
Oh.
have to check it. Hold on.
While you're looking that up, I did like that they included apparently that Brennan in Tyrish means resurrected, which I thought was pretty funny since he was essentially resurrected. But
Yeah, yeah, his last name that he picks.
yeah.
Hold on. It auto corrected to Daenerys. Sorry, guys. We're not looking
What
up
autocorrected to Daenerys?
Dane
Oh,
because I
okay.
did Dane's dragon name and it automatically switched to Daenerys's
Oh wait,
dragon
are you
name.
talking about Dance Dragon?
No, you're right. What am I doing?
Yeah,
Brennan.
you're talking about Brennan's dragon.
I'm talking
It's
about Brennan.
Marbh. I just had looked that up because I was like,
Yeah. Okay.
it means dead or deceased in
Okay.
Gaelic.
There we
It
go.
can also be used as a verb to mean kill or slay or
Okay.
stillness. Lots of
Yeah,
different things.
people think that's very suspicious.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, that is pretty suspicious. I should look up all the dragon names. Now, I did look up Andarna just out of curiosity, but I looked up Terran, and that's how I knew about what Violet's signet was when we first read. So,
oh, mhm. Yeah,
which was
yeah,
really stupid of me to look that up, but
yeah,
that's on me. That one for sure was on me. The other ones, not as much, but
yeah. Okay, but it being like dead or death, I don't know. I don't think that's as suspicious because I think that's playing into the fact that Dane is supposed to be dead. Oh my
and by
gosh, I called
Dane you
him
mean
really
Brennan.
dead. By yes. Oh my
It's a
gosh.
little concerning that you're confusing her brother with a potential love interest first. No, but yeah, it could also mean like kill or slay, which I feel like it's not that crazy for a dragon, but
Yeah, yeah.
But I also could see where, yeah, who knows?
Yes, there people have a lot of thoughts about Brennan, not Dane. We started
Now I have
talking
to look up what's
about
Dane's dragon's name? Cath.
yeah.
I feel like if I look up what the meaning of cath is, it's going to come up with catheters. Yeah, cardiac catheterization. Not what I'm looking for. All right.
Mm-hmm. Put in calf meaning Scottish Gaelic.
All right. This is the podcast where we Google things. Battle. It means battle or fight. So it's pretty generic, but it means something.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, what a time. Let's see. What should we? What's the
Tiny
next?
means fire. I'm just looking them up now for fun.
Yeah. Again, I'm kind of like. So far, they haven't revealed much.
Yeah. Other
I
than
think
Terran. Terran's the, or what does Segale mean? Do we know that?
I don't remember. I think I did know. I think Lilith's dragon, Violet's mom, her dragon is something about storms also.
Yeah. Segale means shadow. So,
Oh, which is Aiden's power. So,
yeah.
yeah. Interesting. Okay. Let's keep on going on. Uh moving on from Brennan. Let's see. Violet thinks she's figured out how to raise the wards or fix the wards. I think this is interesting for a few reasons. One, They figure out the translation was off, which is part of how she figures this out and realizes it's not about six powerful uh, riders, it's about six powerful dragons.
I was super excited by this because I was questioning that when they did it the first time. I'm like, why are you assuming it's riders? It doesn't say anything about riders. So I was pretty excited that I
Mm-hmm.
somewhat got that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hadn't really thought about that Violet has to give all the flyers a choice. She doesn't, excuse me, she doesn't have to, but she does because they're not going to be able, they're going to like lose their connections, like,
Yeah.
and these
I
powers.
I did not even think about that. I was thinking about when they were doing like the runes and that they said that people didn't need to have like magic in order to use the runes. I'm like, oh, so they must team up with someone who can't use magic. And then when she said the thing about how they wouldn't be able to have their powers, I'm like, oh, that's that significance probably. So yeah, I had not even connected that until she talked about them having a choice about what they want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. So very interesting there. Shortly after that, we get the professors have hidden 20 summoning runes out in the snow, and everyone has to be, they're assigned teams, and they have to go find as many of the summoning runes as they can with their dragons. And it's supposedly a test for them and their dragons. And this is where we get the intense encounter with Solus in the caves. Ah! Ugh.
Yeah. Okay, also, wait, you were just explaining why they went out there, and I completely forgot why they went out there. So it was the professors that go out there?
Yeah, it was like part of their class.
Which
It's
now
specifically
has me.
Divira and Trissa.
Okay.
So
Now,
Battle Brief and Runes are the two
yeah.
professors.
I just all of a sudden, like, when you were talking about that, was questioning if, like, how did Solus know where they were, and did they intentionally send them out there to find Solus? But that's another potential theory. But I think that's unlikely based on the teachers that it was. Like, if it was, oh, I can't remember her name. One of the one of the seven people who was never liked Violet. I can't remember her name. I think it starts with an S. It could be wrong. Anyway,
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah, the woman.
Yep. I know who you're talking about, but I also am not
Yeah, but
remembering
it
her.
seems like she was not involved. So,
No.
but who knows?
Yeah. I think it's more likely that Solus, we know he's been in hiding, or she's been in hiding. I keep mixing up
I don't know.
Solus's pronouns with Vade's pronouns. Vade is a she. I can't
Yeah, I
remember
don't
it.
know. Solus. Literally looking it up to see.
I think
It's a
Solus.
male. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
no, that's a different series. Oh, Solus is. Yep, I need to put in Fourth Wing in my search, apparently.
I'm pretty sure male.
Yeah,
Anyways,
it is.
um, I think it's more likely that he was able to find them um, because there's so many dragons there, like,
Yeah,
and we already knew he was hiding out, trying to hide from Tarn. And so then I think, like, I don't know, like a riot of 100 dragons flies across the country. He
yeah,
probably was able to like find that out.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think that is unheard of. I just, when you were talking about them getting sent out there, I had me thinking about it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense that he'd be able to find him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyways, he's in the caves. Ah! This was one of the more intense moments I thought
Yeah.
in this book. Oh, woo, man, spooky. Um, yeah, Violet is then trying to like yell to Tarn, in her through their mental connection, uh, that he's found them. And Taryn can't get into these caves because he's like too big, is the other
Yeah.
thing. Um, but and Darna comes to save Violet. Oh,
Classic Adorna.
no,
Kind of her move.
it is. It really is, particularly in this book. Um, yeah, and then she like shields Violet from the dragon fire with her wings, even though like it says she stretches out her wings, and we knew before this she couldn't stretch out one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like we've got that significant. And then she like goes to attack Solus and like all this stuff. And at first he's like pushing her out of the way. I wish we had a size comparison. We know Solus is on the smaller side. No, that's Bade. Gosh, I'm confusing them so much. Bade is on the smaller side for dragons. We don't really know Solus size. So that's not helpful. I'm just thinking like Andarna is 2/3 the size of Sigale. She's got to be like decently formidable. She's not a little baby against a giant dragon, you know? We also know Sigale is large. So, yeah.
I just Googled it, and according to the Google AI overview, Solus is half the size of Taryn.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to do some dragon math of like half the size of Taryn, and Sigale is smaller than Taryn but bigger than most dragons. And if Andarna's 2/3, Sigale.
You should just have like a chart of all of their heights.
Yeah, we need it like in order. I'm imagining like the science museum one, you know, of all the birds with their wingspans, but with dragons.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Anyways, yeah. So either way, we start the fight between Andarna and Solus. Um Yeah. Violet is flinging daggers. Kat starts to redeem herself a little bit here. She at first runs away and then comes back with her bow and arrow and is shooting at Solus. So that's good for her. Then the battle, like what seems like it's gonna be the thing that ends the battle is Violet's glass orb that she's been using for channeling. It shatters, and she takes one of those pieces and like jams it under a scale, and is then get a lightning wheeled into it. And then Andarna goes and like takes a chunk out of Solus and gets out of there. And it's then later revealed that Andarna killed him.
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy. Tell me your thoughts during this. Tell me your thoughts around this.
I am literally trying to find my notes because I'm like, I feel like I did not react that much to this, which so much happens. I'm like, I must have notes on it.
It's chapter 54, if that's helpful.
That is helpful. My notes are a mess this week. And I literally don't remember what I was thinking in this moment. So, yeah, I think I was just I was thinking about how Jack was dead now, which is not accurate at all. That's what my notes are about. It's about Jack being dead, but then also about Sloane and her power, because that's kind of shows up here with Kat and that sort of thing.
Yep.
I think I just like was pretty sure that Violet wasn't gonna die here, and I was not concerned about it, which is crazy because I'm like,
and you thought it was Bade, so
yeah, I thought it was Bade, so I feel like that, yeah, kind of skewed where I was looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
I was very surprised when Solus showed up, though. I was not expecting that at all. So
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of. I mean, it was kind of out there.
Yeah, yeah. I also, when you were talking about it being like one of the exciting moments or whatever, which I feel bad I don't have more to say, but I'm like genuinely, I don't know if I was reading fast or something. But it made me think back to one moment that was exciting and I was really worried. It was when they were coming back from Takaris and were with all the Griffin Riders. I thought Riddick was gonna die for sure.
Oh
And I
yeah,
was so worried about that, but that all ended up being okay. But yeah.
yeah,
I was so convinced one of the four of them was going to die after they had tempted fate so many times, saying that the four of them were going to make it to graduation. But who knows? Maybe the four of them will make it.
yeah. I know. I thought Sawyer was gonna die. I thought a lot was gonna.
I I thought each of them was going to die at some point during this book. So, um, which also the way that the book left off, they're going to be back at school the next book. It seems like maybe.
Who knows? Who
But who knows who
frickin'
runs the school anymore? So,
yeah. Zayden, I guess. Just
sure.
kidding. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Sloane's power then. We find out that Sloane is a siphon, which means she can pull power from other riders. Kind of similar to what a Venom does to the Earth, but she can do to other riders.
Mhm.
Spooky.
Which I'm just thinking about this now. Doesn't at the end when I don't quite get the whole siphon thing. Um, and I'm just thinking about what happens in the end with Lilith and Sloane. So what is
So,
the siphon exactly?
I mean, I don't think we have a ton of information.
Okay.
We just know that like she is a siphon. Like Violet knows what it is, calls her signet back.
Yeah.
We know that Sloane pulls power from other riders and can like siphon their power from them.
Because I'm just trying to think what exactly was Lilith trying to get her to do?
Yeah, so with the ward zone, Violet could like put her power into the ward stone, which
Yeah.
again, I will say I think that further enhances the theory that like she's not a lightning wielder, she just has like she's a power source, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And she just uses lightning as like the form of it, you know? Um but so she is pushing power into the ward stone.
Hmm.
And they're like, she's not going to be enough. She's going to burn out doing this. So then they send a message through the dragons saying any other rider who can like put power out, like can expel power out, needs to get to the ward stone to like help Violet. And her mom shows up with Sloane. So her mom's power is storm wielding. Her mom cannot put power into a ward stone, but
Okay.
Sloane can pull power out of her mom and then put it into the ward stone.
Gotcha.
So Sloane essentially takes all the power out of Lilith and then puts that into the ward stone to avoid Violet burning out.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I was okay, no, never mind. I just realized that I was, when that happened, she was saying about, oh, well, you're a Maori. And like, I thought when I read that, I was like, oh, does that mean she like knows what her power is? Like, is it some familiar power? But no, she was saying that because then she goes on to say that she killed her mother. So that's what that was about.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a whole tangent that I is not significant in the way that I thought it was going to be. But that is helpful to understand that because I didn't
Yeah.
fully. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, okay. Then we can talk about the next big thing that happens after this attack is Satan confronts Violet and is like, "So you finally gonna ask about the deal between me and your mom?" And let's talk about this. Okay, I am with you. This is so dumb. This is so dumb. This is like the pinnacle of me being mad about their miscommunication.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I would say overall, their miscommunication, I wasn't that annoyed about because the miscommunication trope that I get annoyed with is where they think they completely understand something and they don't, versus in this, it's like they're aware they don't know things, but they're just not talking about stuff that maybe they should be. But it's not like, oh no, you're misunderstanding the situation. So overall, like I don't have that much problem, but here I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
didn't feel like it took up as much of the book as I remember. The first time reading through it, I felt like it was half the plot was them being like, I wonder what this thing is, instead of ever asking each other. And it was driving me insane,
Yeah.
insane. And how much Violet would not talk about stuff. Like, it was driving me crazy. Or how much they would just talk about Kat instead of like all these things she had real questions about, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Anyways, um, yeah. So, um, yes, we find out like Zayden knew that Violet knew about the deal with the mom.
Which I
Um,
wasn't surprised by. Violet seemed surprised by that, but I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I
Yeah.
don't even know. Yeah. Um, yeah, so we have that. They kind of move on from that. Not really, like they don't move on emotionally. They just like start talking about something else, which is basically accusing each other. Zayden is like, Violet, you didn't forgive me. Violet's like, you're not telling me stuff, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but then Violet's like, all right, I'm going to test you. What's your second signet? And this threw me the first time I read it.
Yeah, I did not put it together at all. I wasn't like insanely shocked, but I did not see it coming for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was just so focused. I was at this point was just so annoyed with Zayden that I was like that didn't even like if I was less annoyed with Zayden, I would have been like, what? But I yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got really annoyed because he didn't answer her. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You just said all that stuff about her having to ask a question and then you don't answer when she asks you a direct question. So I was
Yep.
like, okay, there's a second signet. He's being an asshole. So but
Oh, yeah. Um, yeah. I did we know, and I've just missed both times reading, did we know that Sigale was bonded to his grandfather, not an uncle?
I missed that. I thought it was the uncle, but
I
it's clear that
yeah.
you did know it, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember reading that. And so I'm wondering if that ties into what we were talking about earlier of like Violet knows the family history better and Zayden told people it's a great uncle, but it's not. Or Sigale told humans, I don't know. But yeah, that it's actually his grandfather. And then we learn dragons are not allowed to bond with direct descendants because they either go mad or have a second signet. And so Violet's like, you are not crazy, so you have a second signet. Um, yeah.
I did
But then Brennan
try
comes.
to look it up about if how Violet knew that it was Zayden's grandfather, and apparently he just told her. But yeah, I have no recollection of that. But
Yeah, I missed it. Hmm, look at that.
yeah,
Interesting. Um, yeah, so we have that. And
I did have a note here that I did feel like previously that Xaden was one of my favorite like love interests in a romantasy, and when this happened, I'm like, I don't know if that's true anymore. After their whole little fight here, I'm like,
yeah,
I was not feeling Xaden as much with this book overall. So
yeah, they are. I do think that's like the downside, right? Of when you have like all like teenage young adult characters, if you don't make them act like young adults, like
yeah.
I don't know, so they are acting like young adults, but still dumb. Uh yeah. Okay. The next like thing that happens is around the dragons trying to power the wards. So they have a dragon that it needs to be activated by a dragon of each den. Um, and they believe Warwick has said there's six, like the six dens, and that's what they currently know, and all these things. Let's just jump forward because we eventually find out like Lilith says that Warwick's journal won't work, that there's a lie. And so then they're trying to figure out what the lie is and all these things. And we end up finding out that it is that there's seven dens, not six, of course. And then Endarna is the other one. But yeah. Any thoughts around this?
I mean, I
Yeah.
kind of saw that it coming that it was going to be dragons and not the
Yeah.
riders, but
Mm,
yeah, I guess it just has me leaving more with more questions about I guess we don't even really have a name for the den that and Darn is a part of, but like wanting to know more about that and why there hasn't been any for so long. And yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
Did you have thoughts that you wanted to talk about with it?
No, I asked and then realized I said all of mine already.
Okay.
Classic. Um, okay, I do want to talk about the next thing that happens in this same chapter, which was pretty minor. I didn't think anything of it on my first read through, but it stood out more to me this time, which is and Darna is questioned by some of the elder dragons for killing Solus. And it's found justifiable. So she gets a pass. But Taryn says that to slay another dragon is a heavy mark upon the soul, even if it's in defense of yourself or your rider. And that's why he didn't kill Solus before and only took one of his eyes, because like the mark is so heavy and Taryn didn't want to bear that on his soul. And I just think that's going to come up again, that
Yeah.
Andarna did this seemingly so young. You know, that's complicated because we learn she is both younger and older than all the dragons. So complicated there. But yeah, I thought this was very interesting.
I also am questioning right now because they talk about how the elders are like the oldest members of each den, which makes Indarna an elder, but Taryn isn't aware of that. So maybe he
Right.
didn't
Like
know that
she
Indarna also got to like talk about it. I don't know. Like that is totally possible. I'm way off on that, but that
yeah,
is
like
talk about what the elders are is like the oldest of the den, and she is that, and the Empyrean knows that. So I don't know.
yeah, yeah, like did she go represent herself?
Yeah, that'd be a little crazy,
Lawyer.
but no, I do think that is significant, and I that yeah, that kind of I didn't clock that. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. Oh, we totally skipped over. It's not important except for I just was thinking about we're about to come up to one of the lines Zayden says that has the internet in a chokehold. which is the it took you 1 second or 3 seconds or whatever to fall out of love with me, which made me realize we did not address, we skipped right past it because you guys already know me and Amy want to talk about fantasy. We want to talk about cool, the mythical creatures. We want to talk about the lore. We're less interested in the romance, even though we both like romances. But we skipped right over chapter 48. The thing that I think I would say the scene that Book Talk holds on to equal to the grab the headboard scene from Silver Flame is the entire scene between Xaden and Violet on the throne. That's a whole other thing. I don't need to talk about it more. I just know people want it addressed. So I'm addressing it there. There we go. Let's jump back to the next line in how fast it took her to fall out of love with him, which I do not think is accurate, but yeah.
No.
This is when Xaden finally reveals his second signet. Although he doesn't reveal it, Violet guesses it.
Doesn't he? Does she guesses it and he doesn't tell her? Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she does. Okay. I just highlighted where it says I'm a type of intrinsic, but right before it says you're an intrinsic. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I like in the grand scheme of things was surprised by, but I wasn't surprised when she said it because like a page before I'm like, can he read minds? Like, so yeah.
Yeah, I think we only don't like we would pick up on it more if their dragons weren't bonded because he clearly trusts her really early and stuff like that. Like he knows she's not going to tell people about the meeting of all the marked ones and things like that because he can sense her intentions, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought here that things between them might be okay because they can already read each other's mind, but didn't really figure out like the fact that he can read intentions is a whole different kind of thing. And he definitely was questionably like violating some trust there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was. And also, I do think, like, I think being able to tell people's intentions versus read their thoughts are just so different, you
Yeah.
know? Like, I don't even know that that would officially be a security threat in the same way they just, like, kill off people who can read people's thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like it's
But I don't
kind of
know.
more similar to Dane, where it's like it's not you're not just intrinsic, like it's a specific kind. But I do think it's interesting to be able to read someone's intentions because I feel like some people like don't even know sometimes their own intentions. So that
Hmm.
is interesting, I think. But
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. Hmm. And I think it's a very valuable asset to him as someone leading a rebellion. Obviously, that's an incredibly powerful to be like, I wield shadows, so I hear all this stuff and I know your intentions. Like,
yeah, it does
that's
make
a
me
great
curious about like the lens of their relationship, like from his perspective, and like when he like knew things that we didn't realize that he did know. It also makes me wonder if we'll get if with the next book more from Xaden's perspective now that we know that about him, because like that could be a reason where we weren't getting as much of his perspective because we didn't know that that was a power of his. So that could be interesting. But
I also think it means that potentially we'll get more information about the Venon's intentions
yeah.
in this
Oh
next
yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Because right now the assumption is just that it's all about this selfish desire for power. But the only official confirmation we have about that is Jack Barlow, who, let's be honest, don't trust that that's
Yeah, I'm
totally.
curious to see if we learn about Jack Barlow's intentions. I'm also
There's
curious
a
now
lot.
that we know that Xaden has this power. I guess a lot of people have shields up because I was like, I also have questions about Takaris. He must know more about Takaris because he spent so much time
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So it'll be
Huh.
interesting if we get answers with that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
he was always suspicious of Takaris, and like that makes sense why. So I don't
yeah,
know.
for sure. For sure.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, so super, super interesting. Once again, we're gonna not necessarily, but kind of undercut that more intense moment and jump right into they're being attacked, a thing's coming, like that's the go-to thing in this
Having a
book.
moment? Not anymore.
Yep. With everyone. So yeah. Um we do also, sorry, I jumped ahead a little, but Zayden specifically says uh that as soon as he realized how hurtful Dane was to her is when he like put a hard stop to ever reading Violet's intentions when he could help it, but so often because of their bond, Violet shouted her intentions down the bond at him, which I think is interesting. I don't know if we'll get more on that or not, but just to know. Um,
I also, for the record, think she's still in love with him because that's kind of how we started when we were starting to talk about this when he's like, "Oh, you're gonna fall out of love with me," and yeah, no,
oh yeah, I mean, she literally says Violet is like my love is not like a fickle thing.
no, yeah, she does. Forgot that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and that she has more questions, which
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
Yeah, but then we find out 17 Venin are coming, or are there? Yeah.
And hundreds, wasn't it? Hundreds of wyvern. I was like, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, horde that rivals what Violet had brought, the riot that Violet had brought. Woo, that was a little bit of a tongue twister, which we know is 100, so at least 100 wyvern. Whew. Intense. At first, they think that the wards are working when this first happens. However, uh, they soon learn that it's not because people can do some like minor magic things who are flyers who shouldn't be able
Mhm.
to. So then that's when they realize something is wrong with the wards. And then eventually it's revealed Warwick lied in his journal, and we find out there's 7 dragons, not 6. So there's that.
Yeah, which now this has me thinking like back in the beginning of like Fourth Wing when we first learned about the wards and them potentially not working, we thought those were little flare-ups of the wards not working, but in reality it's like they haven't ever been working because
No, they have. The original ones had all 7 dragons.
okay. Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, and they made 2, and then for some reason Warwick chose to lie in his journal and say there were only 6,
Yeah.
but there were always 7. So that's why when they see Lyra's, I think that's her name, right? Lyra's journal,
Lyra, yeah.
Lyra. I was like, wait, Lyra is the character in A Golden Compass. I don't feel like that's her name. uh, yeah, so in Lyra's journal, it's 7, and they think that's the lie at first. Like they think she's lying, and then there's the realization that no, there's 7. There's 7 dens. But we don't know anything beyond that, like why Warwick lied or anything like that. In that same section, um, Violet talks about like uh, clearly like they had enough dragons in the past that they would have been able to like make as many ward stones as they wanted. Like there were enough dragons to have like a representation from each den at all these places, but that now because they just have Andarna, they can just do one ward stone. That's all they can
It's
like.
at best Gaius.
Yes. Um, which is a whole freaking thing. Which I do think, like, if they hadn't done that, they would have died. So
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Um, but that's just interesting. The note of like, why did they only make two? Was it because there was only two dragons in Andarna's den before? And then they had one egg that was Andarna, and that was going to be it? Was it something else? Like, why did they only make two?
Yeah, interesting. I'm curious if we'll get to know more about. I mean, it's called the Empyrean series. I'm assuming we'll learn more about what goes on inside the Empyrean because I feel like we don't have much information. So,
Yeah. And currently, we're led to believe humans are not allowed to know.
yeah. What about Venom?
Yeah,
Probably not.
I'm sure. I'm sure they're them. It's fine.
They're besties.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Oh man. Um. Yeah. Jumping back to chapter 57. Well, they're like, in war. Oh, this is when they're meeting with Melgren. This is my next thing I wanted to talk about. Uh, so we have a meeting to make like a truce. Brennan kind of messes that up and is like, no truce. But in the process, Violet's mom finds out Brennan is alive.
Hmm.
So that's big. She doesn't punch him.
Probably good since it's her son that she kind of sent off to die. So punching him.
For the best.
Eh.
For the best. Um, yeah. So there's that. This is when Violet's mom tells them that whatever they did, War External isn't going to work. So Violet's mom knew there was a lie in War External. Doesn't mean she necessarily knew there was a seventh dragon den, but she knows War External was either altered or was not truthful. Like she knew the words wouldn't work. So curious about that. Probably not going to get answers there because she's dead. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
probably not. I
Um,
also did have a note during this whole thing when they're like, I think it's Mira is like, oh yeah, it's Mira who says that they're only protecting people within their borders and fuck everyone else, right? And then Melgren's response to that is just insane and shows me he's not a good person for sure. Because he's like, yes. And then he says, when you abandon ship in the middle of a hurricane, you save those you can in the dinghy, then cut the hands off anyone else who tries to climb aboard so they don't pull you under. I'm like, no, that is not what you do. That's insane. I just, oh man, that got me in that moment. I'm like, wow, this man is crazy. But
harsh survival
yeah,
ideologies there.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Um, okay, we also learn right around here in this chapter that they think someone may have given the Venom runes, and this is where they discover the runes in the Wyvern.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Or no, this is not where they discover that. Maybe. Yes, this is where they discover this.
Okay, I was like, I
The stones are in there, and then one of the Wyvern come back to life. It's reanimated, and Violet kills it again. So yes. Um, then we get Violet and Xaden kind of patch things up, aka they say they're not going to keep secrets for realsies from each other. And Xaden agrees, and Violet says she promises to stay with him no matter what. I think this is important
that
because
is
it's
significant. Yep. I did not clock that, but yeah. Ooh,
yep.
that's interesting.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Particularly with Xaden's dream that he has there
Yeah, yeah.
at the end. So yeah. Um,
This
he
is
talks
also where
more.
she asks about his mom.
Mm-hmm. Tell us
And
about that.
yeah, and he seems hesitant at first, but then says that she left when he was young, and they had a marriage contract saying that the heir, meaning Xaden, had to survive to the age of 10, and then she was free to go, which she did, and he hasn't seen her or heard from her since. And that's what we get. And I'm really curious that you mentioned last week about fan theories about what's going on with his mom. And I love a good fan theory.
Yeah, more than I
Or a
found.
bad fan theory. I like both. Don't discriminate.
Yeah, more than I found specific things. It was just on like the extensive list of things that people are like obsessively looking for
Okay.
clues about as they're rereading. I
Okay,
hate to
gotcha.
disappoint you. I didn't see anything that I was like, oh, that's compelling. It was
Yeah,
mostly people who are just like, what's Violet's signet? Is her mom Venom? Is Brennan evil? Who's uh Xaden's mom? And then what happened to Violet's dad are like a lot of the common
that makes
things people are
sense.
looking for on the rereads.
I'm also really sad because I now cannot go and look on TikTok to see what the theories are on Zayden's mom because while we've been recording, TikTok has gone down. So, uh,
Yeah, I know. I was like, I
theories.
lost all my saved videos that all had
Oh no.
I know. Today I just saved all of them on TikTok. I did or on Instagram. I didn't even look on TikTok. But it was honestly so much harder to find things. Like the
Hmm.
For You page is just not as effective for
Yeah.
searching.
Yeah.
Instagram is not for research,
No.
unlike TikTok, which was.
Yeah.
That sounds dumb, but like if you know, you
No,
know.
I think it's true. There's
Yeah,
there's some magic in that algorithm, man.
I know. I saw this is such a tangent, but I saw something very funny, which was a TikTok. It was a reel on Instagram of a TikTok creator pulling out all their makeup. And they were like, now that TikTok's going down and you have to look hot to succeed on Meta. And so she's like having to pull out all her makeup because she's like, I can't gain an audience. Anyways, it was sad but funny. Tragic. Oh man. Okay, back to Iron Flame. So, yeah, yep. So that's it about Zayden's mom.
Yeah.
People are curious. There you go. Okay. This is where Violet realizes they are gonna attack Vizgaiath, and Xaden kind of makes the decree that they're gonna go, whether the assembly supports or not. The assembly does not support, and they go anyways. So there you go. Yeah.
So does nobody go except Brennan, who ends up coming later? I'm just
Brennan
trying.
comes later.
That's all we know of, I think.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of other people go either because we know it took 2 full days before, and we know Taryn gets there in like 18 hours of flying, and other dragons probably couldn't have kept up. Hence why they went at a much slower pace before.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's more my own theory than we know that for sure. So, yes. They go to the wards after they get to Bisgayeth and find that all the guards have been killed. And lo and behold, who is there? Who? It's Bade, the dragon? Oh, and who? Jack Barlow is here still? Crazy. To be honest, didn't see this coming. I was kind of like, oh, Jackie boy is out of the picture for a bit. But he came
I
back.
figured he was up to something, but I had no idea what. Not a clue.
Just, yeah, I don't know. Something. This is, yeah. So Jack comes. Bade grabs the ward stone, but Jack stabs Bade in the neck and kills Bade. Jack
I
kills Bade.
was like, here, I was like, what is he doing? And I was confused. I'm like, is he on their side? Is like, because they talk about that Bade had like opaque eyes instead of golden. And I'm like, is Bade like somehow possessed or something? And Jack is like killing him, which I still don't know what the significance of that was, I guess.
Well, I'm wondering if it's because Jack has been siphoning all Bade's like life from him, from
Hmm.
her, because he's Venom. You know,
Yeah, I
that's
don't
it.
know.
I hadn't made that connection. But yeah, Jack kills Bade. To me, this is like the ultimate evil. Like Bade still chose him. Like this is the unredeemable. Ugh.
I know. I just am so curious about the timeline of when Jack became Venom,
Yeah,
because it could have been at like any point before threshing. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. We just know it's before the challenge, so
You didn't notice anything when you reread this about them describing his eyes or anything?
no.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like it makes more sense that like in his initial like he gets here and he's so clearly obsessed with becoming like the most powerful strongest like cadet, you know,
Yeah.
that then would choose to become Venom
Yeah.
during this, I think makes sense, but I don't know.
Yeah. That is interesting.
We'll see. We'll see. The wards fall. Jack lives. Um, yeah. We also learned Jack showed, he claims that he's already shown the other Venom how to get into Basgiath. And specifically, he has like tracking runes basically that let them find where to go. So, yeah. Oh, Dane is here. Dane came. Great. Um, and yeah, so Dane grabs him, sees his memories, but then Jack is like starting to like drain the life out of Dane. Um, but they save Zane. They save him. Don't worry. Okay. We got a lot of things going on with the fight. We got a lot of things going with repairing the ward stones. We've already kind of talked about they do repair the ward stones and how that happens some with Violet's mom, her mom giving her life in the end. Um, so there's a lot there. But I know we are still coming up on that 3 hour mark, even though we didn't do as much summarizing. So I'm going to try to be brief here. Um, yeah, this is where we specifically find out that the Venom have orders not to kill Violet and that they want Violet in this. Once again, and Darna jumps out of hiding and saves Violet from nearly dying again. And then, and Darna roasts the Venom and rips his head off his body.
Yeah.
This is very important because no other Dragonfire has killed a Venom.
Yeah.
This is the first time Dragonfire has killed a Venom, which leads me to the final fan theory that we have not yet covered today. I'm going to jump ahead a bit. So keep that in mind. And now we're going to jump ahead to Andarna revealing that she is the seventh den of dragons. She is this other type. Specifically, where are we going? Okay. And Darna says she waited 650 years to hatch, all the way until Violet's 18th summer, when she heard the elders talk of a weakling daughter of their general. The girl forecasted to become the head of the scribes, and that's when she knew it was time to hatch. Since Violet would have the mind of a scribe and the heart of a writer, she knew that was like the rider for her, and it was time to hatch. Um, then she reveals she is the seventh breed of dragon. Okay, so here's where we have to go back a bit. Way at the beginning of this book, Brennan says that all the venom disappeared 600 years ago. And he has been researching what weapon knocked out all of the venom 600 years ago.
Mhm.
And Darna has been waiting for 650 years. So,
Sure.
and we now know that she is seemingly the only dragon fire that kills venom. So, a common fan theory that I think makes a lot of sense. Something happened to the rest of Andarna's den. I don't know. For some reason, they knew they were going to be wiped out, but they had one egg that hadn't hatched that they knew was going to be this seventh den member. And so they purposely kept her hidden and made her wait in case the venom ever came back, because they were the only thing that could wipe out the venom. Like that specific den's dragon fire was the thing that can kill venom. And I think that's what killed them 600 years ago.
Sure, that makes sense.
So that's
I feel
my
like I just had a lot of thoughts there, and now that you're done talking, I'm like, I don't know what any of my thoughts were about that. Um, I do have so can anybody become Venom? Like, is that
I think so, yeah. Because it's not just riders or anything like that. In fact, we don't know, besides Jack and maybe Violet's mom, of anyone that is venom and a rider.
yeah.
People on other continents.
I just don't know what's up with these Venom.
We're gonna find out something in Onyx Storm.
Yeah, I think that's a solid theory. Other than like, I'm like, but why wouldn't they have had more eggs? Like if they knew, because if she if Indarna had been waiting 650 years, and I guess something wiping them out 600 years ago, 600 probably isn't an exact number. So I was like, oh, but she was sitting there waiting for 50 years. Why wouldn't they have had more? But hmm, I like that theory.
Yeah, yeah. My thought being like all of a sudden they knew some event was gonna happen that they had to like sacrifice or be the weapon or whatever. And they didn't have time to like, okay, we have to reproduce a bunch. And they just only had one egg already laid.
Yeah,
So then like they knew she was going to be the only one.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm just like wondering like why she like knew that she had to wait versus just hatching right away. But we don't really know that much about dragons and how long they typically wait or how long it takes for them to hatch, that sort of thing. But and then I'm also curious like when the venom reappeared then, if they were wiped out
Right.
600 years ago, which is why I asked about if anyone could become one. And yeah. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So much
Yeah.
to think about.
So much to think about. So much to think about.
Also,
Um,
something that we haven't talked about yet was the different colors of fire coming from the wyvern. What's up with that?
yeah. Yeah. Okay, we learned this detail actually in our reading last week.
Mm-hmm.
That there was like green fire and blue fire, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what is stronger? I think it's green fire are like the more powerful
I don't
ones.
remember which one.
But they went over that in one of the classes, but it was just like a smaller note.
Yeah, but then there's a red fire that, and Violet is like, there's another type of fire we don't know about.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. That's what I was talking about.
That makes sense.
That's all we got. And I really don't have much more to say on it, but it's another thing that's like, what's up with that, you know?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Okay, the kind of the last thing to talk about that hasn't been addressed then is Xaden's POV, and we get his flashback of what happened with the sage. Uh,
Hmm.
and uh he says Xaden is holding the venom with his magic and is becoming venom, and Sigale is like crying and telling him like she chose him not to, and is asking him like don't become a venom, I chose you, you know. And
Hmm.
then he says but Violet chose me too. And
Yeah.
then he like bolts upright that he turns out was having a nightmare. But like I think we can believe that's the flashback
Yeah.
of what
Yeah.
happens. Um, he walks down and has a conversation with Jack Barlow, who is in a holding cell, and Jack responds that there's no cure, like it's not a disease they have power. Um, and yeah, it's
Yeah, I'm really curious what the relationship between Xaden and Sigale is gonna be like, because it says something after he wakes up from the nightmare about how he doesn't bother reaching out for her because it's been eerily silent since the battle ended. And I mean, if we're to believe that his nightmare is what happened, he did essentially choose Violet over Sigale. So, and directly like did not listen to Sigale in that moment. So yeah.
yeah. And when Violet first finds out, we don't have a lot of Sigale talking to Violet. She pretty rarely talks to him,
Hmm.
seemingly compared to how much Taryn talks to Xaden. She really does not talk to Violet. Um, and we kind of get vibes she's maybe not that into Violet. Like, yeah. Um, but she specifically says to like be gentle. Like she kind of warns Violet as she's going up to Xaden.
I
Um,
was freaking out that whole time. I'm like, what is happening right now? Something really bad is happening, but I had no idea what that was coming.
yeah, yeah. And that's where we end this freaking book. And then some of us had to wait a whole year.
That was my last note. It was highlighting what Jack said and about like him talking about like Zayden says something about how he'd rather die than become like Jack, and he's like, but you just did. And I'm like, I am so like that's a crazy ending, and I am so glad I only have to wait 3 days instead of like 15 months.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm very excited. I'm going on Monday to a midnight release party that's like Fourth Wing themed. So that'll be cute. I'm not wearing a costume, but I am going to do a braided crown.
There you go. I
So,
was going to go to Target when it opens at 7 a.m. to see if I could get their special edition, but I realized I have a work meeting at 6:30 a.m. But I don't have to talk during it, so I might just put it in my headphones and go to the meeting while I'm at Target. That very well might happen.
the most relatable thing that all the, I just am imagining all the women and some men, but mostly women, like at Target for opening, also on work conference calls, pretending they're there.
But I don't think there's a lot of people who have work meetings at 6:30 in the morning.
Probably not.
I'm a rare exception to that. So,
Probably
yeah.
still.
And
So
I'm like not like gonna be like crazy about, but I was just like, oh, I could get up and go then and see if they have them. Like, I'll probably, yeah. Otherwise, whatever. It's fine.
yeah. Okay,
Anyway,
it would be cool though, because I part of my like ticket for going to the midnight release party is you essentially have to buy one of the deluxe copies. So I'll
Hmm.
have the one that's going out for all the pre-order bookstores. So then
Hmm.
it'd be cool if you had the Target one, because then we'll
Yeah.
have the two special editions.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
cool.
was looking at the difference, and I do think the regular one looks cooler. But I also know that there's issues with pre-orders with people, so I was like, I'm probably not going to be able to get that one. So,
I think they sold out. A lot of places sold out a long
well,
time
there
ago.
was like people who placed orders 11 months ago on Amazon and are getting notifications saying that they aren't getting them. I'm like, I would be livid. Especially pre-orders, like especially when they're that far in advance. The whole point of them is so that you know
No,
how many you have to produce. Like, that's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am like, if you're doing like limited edition sprayed edge things, I am team either have that just be your first run
Yeah.
or make it like a really limited edition, like we're doing 2,000 copies and that's it. Like
Yeah.
either make it like all the way rare or like just first edition special, you
Hmm.
know? That's
Like that Brie Tanner where they donated the money to the Red Cross.
yeah, right.
Uh,
Oh, so funny. Yeah. I also think it's funny they re-released a new edition of the Court of Thorns and Roses series. They reprinted
yeah.
the Night Court edition at the same time. I do not
I
know.
have so many problems with that. I have so many problems with that. Because
Yeah.
it's just black, first of all. It's pretty boring. And what is the point of putting out a set when it's not all of the books yet? I'm like, that would infuriate me if I got that. And then I had these couple books that came after that didn't match it. I'm like, it's so silly.
It just felt like they wanted to be part of the Fourth Wing hype, so they're re-releasing in the
Yeah.
same colors.
I think I saw something that it was like their 10th anniversary or something of the first book, which I'm like, is that accurate?
So
I don't know if that's accurate,
I
but
think so. I mean, she's been writing a lot longer than like
yeah.
Rebecca Yarros or a
I
lot of
just
the
know
other.
she's been putting out so many books, but she had multiple series that I was like, I didn't realize that she like bounced around so much with them. But
Yeah. Well, Throne of Glass, she got published at 16 and she's in her 30, like late 30s
I
now.
I just looked this up recently. I don't think she got it published that early, but she started writing it that early because I
Oh,
just
maybe
literally just looked this up like last week, but I don't remember everything. But
that's when she published online, like she put them
oh,
online
okay. Sure. Yeah.
versus like got them like traditionally published.
Yeah.
Because she put them on one of those like submit your own story sites.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'm just looking right now at her publishing dates and the first ACOTAR was May 5th, 2015, which totally makes sense, but I'm like, holy crap, that was 10 years ago. That's because I'm like, oh, yeah, I knew it was 10 years ago, but I just can't believe that was 10 years ago, man. Oof, I'm old.
Crazy. All that to say, is there more we could talk about with this book? Probably. Probably. Have we already been talking for 3 hours? Yes.
Did we
So,
intend to have a shorter episode, but still talk for 3 hours? Yes.
mhm, yes. So,
Mm.
I think we just wrap it up here. Thank you all for listening. I feel like this episode was kind of fun because we just talked about all our theories.
Yeah. I know it'll be interesting to see what we do for our next one. We don't have the how much we'll be reading because we don't have the book yet. So and this will be the first time that we are both reading something and have all of the same information while we read. So maybe we'll do something similar to this again, or who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. We do know we've decided we're going to break it up more than we did the last two books. So it will be at least 3 weeks. We're just assuming it's going to be at least the same, around the same size or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And because like we want to enjoy this book, like I've been waiting for it for a year. It's obviously like big hype. So as much as we want to be like with the rush of people coming out with content, I would rather enjoy reading the book. So,
And if you're reading it, you can read it all and then you can watch our episodes and it'll go for a couple weeks longer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll jump back into Breaking Dawn once we finish Onyx Storm.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then who knows what we're gonna do? Well, we're gonna do Life and Death, and then who knows what we're gonna do?
Uh,
What a time! All right, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week. If you haven't seen already, go to Fantasy Fangirls Instagram and look at their Onyx Storm. Oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about the article about Rebecca Yarros. We don't have time.
maybe next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week.
That's funny.
Insane.
Then I can actually read the article before we talk about it. Great.
Yeah, great. Yeah, the Fantasy Fangirls podcast, who is a great, very large podcast, made Onyx Storm reading rules that are about like, don't put spoilers, don't like make this fun or not fun for other people, and don't immediately start asking, when are you coming out with the next book, Rebecca? Particularly if you read the article in L, the things that are most impactful, to give you the quickest version, is essentially she realized that despite writing the books to have more visibility about her chronic illness, she then did not act or create any boundaries for herself like a chronically ill person in writing these books, in the press tour, and pushed herself super far. I have lots I want to say about it because the parallels and people's complaints about Violet's toxic pushing through pain and what Rebecca Yarros chooses to do writing this series, I think is fascinating. I was in tears as a chronically ill person who pushes through pain a lot. I related a lot to her choices and realizing how toxic her choices were being. Anyways, it was just good, but mostly it's a great reminder to like not immediately then be like, when are you writing the next book? Like she's already said, she's doing things differently from here on out and is taking like real time off. Which bummer, because who knows when we're not getting the next book probably in a year. That's what I take that to mean. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.